on revisions. These are new additions to English 103 starting in the fall of 2020. So they are not in every discussion for each session right now, but I'm working on that. So what I want to do is talk about what our aim is with these changes. So in the past, we only had one revision project, and now we have three. So we're going to revise our 5-paragraph paper, we're going to revise our literary analysis, and we're going to revise our academic paper. So in the past, we just had this one where we did our 5-paragraph paper in session 1, and we revised it in session 2, and then we moved on to the literary analysis. But you'll notice now we have a literary analysis revision in session 4 and a revision of our academic paper from session 4 in session 5. So why add all of this? Why is this so important and valuable? Why do it 3 times? Well, there are a lot of reasons for that, and I'm very excited that we're doing this because I think that just one wasn't really enough. So starting in session 2, some of your reading is going to cover the revision process. So that's a great place to start. But in general, we look at feedback, we look at our grade, and we say, okay, and we are either happy or sad, and we just move on. But that's not good. We need to look at that feedback and that grade and ask questions and have a dialogue about it. So I want you to start thinking about this as a multifaceted process, not just for our class where we're making you do that, but for all of your classes, because I want you to be asking questions. So some things that you want to do when you see feedback is ask how you can apply that to future work. It's a great time to ask for clarification. How do you take feedback that makes sense and apply it? What does that really look like? Or you applied the feedback, but did you do it right? Did it work? Did it make sense? Did you just cause more problems with revision? Generally, we're turning in a first draft, and that's not very good either. We really want a first or second or third draft to be going in there. We want to have all that discussion. We want to ask questions, and we want to gain insights. So for me, I know that it's a really big thing. I work really hard to figure out what feedback should look like and how I can help you. However, I'm just in an echo chamber unless you tell me if it's working. So please know that I love your questions, that every question you ask means that I get to be better at it. I get to apply your feedback to my feedback, which helps every other student that's coming behind you. So never feel badly about that. So what am I doing with feedback? How is your instructor considering it? I can't speak for absolutely everyone and every facet here. However, there are a couple of things across the board at pretty much every school in the United States. So grading criteria. These are called rubrics. They're called grading criteria. There tend to be a set of specifics, details that every assignment needs to meet. This is all about reciprocity, so that if you take an English class here, another university halfway across the country can say, okay, you got a B in that, it's the same as a B here. Without all of these specifics and criteria, we would all just sort of be doing our best, but we wouldn't really connect with one another, and we wouldn't necessarily be doing the best job possible for students. So it generally covers content, but it also includes writing basics like grammar and punctuation. And I'm always looking at those as well. So no matter how much they weigh in on that particular grade, I'm also looking at them just to support you. So the grading criteria could be really different based on any assignment. You always want to go in there and look at it. It's available for you to review. I try to share it as a screen capture within each session's announcement so that you see what all of your assignments are being reviewed on, sort of what that criteria is. But it's also a good opportunity for you to apply it yourself. Go through your paper when you're ready to turn it in and ask yourself, what box would I tick for this particular section? If it's asking about APA, how do you feel you did? If it's asking about content, if it's asking about an introduction, if it's asking about a specific area, how do you think you did? That creates a great starting point, a baseline for talking with your instructor and saying, well, I felt like I did this and you chose that, so where do we meet in the middle? How do we understand one another? Some ideas to get you going with this are to have targeted reading markers with small steps with a good, clear focus. So ask things like, what is the thesis? Does every paragraph have one point? that you could sum up in 10 words or less, like a fortune cookie? Are you consistent and fill in the blank? So with punctuation, with how you use commas, with how you use periods, with how you do page numbers, with headers and footers. Ask yourself about that consistency, because that's a good red flag that something is off. When you get to your reference page and all but one match. So when one is sort of sticking out as the oddball, ask why. Why isn't it consistent? Is it really supposed to be different, or did something go wrong? Ask how well your conclusion functions. These are also good questions in terms of thesis and paragraph and conclusion to ask when you're reading, because that's where you're going to gain insights into how loads of other people do it, and you're going to see those building blocks put into use in many different ways, and you're going to get stronger at writing. So the next part, now you kind of know what I'm doing. You're kind of ready for that. But what exactly do I want you to give back? And how exactly do you make this work? Well, one, I want you to think about this in sort of a limited capacity. I don't want you to look at an entire paper and say, I want to tackle everything, because you're going to just sort of be scattershot with that. I want you to think about a limited number of items that you want to work on. As you increase in skill, you'll move on to other ones. But how do you pick what kind of things to focus on? So I really like Pearson Smart Thinking's idea about high order and low order concerns. So a high order concern, a higher order, is something like your main idea or your thesis, the fact that you have an introduction and a conclusion. This is all about content. How are you sharing? Are you making sense? Can people read what you have presented and follow through with both the assignment and what you feel, think, and are responding to? Lower order concerns are things like grammar, mechanics, sentence structure. Generally, they shouldn't overly affect, like if you are doing these well and yet you have terrible grammar, it should still be okay. You should be making things pretty clear cut. That's why they're lower order. These things become higher order when they are in the way of sharing your ideas and your concepts. But generally, they aren't that bad. Also, you'll notice that the numbers for these in the grading criteria are lower in a discussion thread. So especially when I'm grading, I'm looking at your discussion thread in terms of content. How are you sharing with all of us? Because we're having a conversation. And the last thing I want you to think about in a group conversation is, oh, how are my transitions? What was my word choice like? Did I do that well? I want you to be thinking about all of this in our discussions. So you'll notice that I'm not commenting on these kinds of ideas in your discussion, that I'm focusing on these because I want it to be a conversation, and I don't converse with people and edit their grammar. That's just not really helpful or useful. So how do you go about picking these? I encourage you to choose one from each category. So maybe you want to focus on main ideas. Maybe you struggle with commas. That's a great way to focus on two concepts as you go through your work that you consistently increase in. So for me, I worked on commas for a long time. There are about 10 different rules. I've worked on that. From there, I moved to semicolons. From there, I moved to split infinitives. So there's always something that I'm working on that I really want to feel confident and understand. Right now, I'm working on the word because it sometimes works as a coordinating conjunction and sometimes it doesn't. And so sometimes it needs a comma and sometimes it doesn't. And so that's my newest little grammar tidbit that I am zooming in on. But I'm also working on organization because I want that to be clearer in my work as my work sort of size increases. So look through these for yourself, see what you want to gain and insights into. When you feel confident, choose something new. It doesn't mean that you stop focusing on anything else. It just means that you have a focus for increased growth in an area, and then everything around it is going to sort of gradually grow with it. It doesn't tend to work in sort of a vacuum when we're looking at literature and language and English. So as you focus on that, other things are going to sort of come up beside it. So next step, when you're submitting an assignment, what does it look like? I tend to think of it as two elements. You'll see based on your own work and how you feel about it, how much you put into each side of these, into one versus two, that kind of thing. But this is what I want you to be thinking about. One, how do you actually revise the work? How do you create a second draft that incorporates feedback? And also, I want you to be comfortable about asking comments. What surprised you about feedback? What confused you? Maybe I focused on a main idea and you want to focus on organization. Ask, explore that. We're a team. I want you to feel really part of all of that because it's your writing and your communication that we're working on. So here are some examples. So a student turns in a work. I've screen captured just a paragraph. And then when I go into the box function, this is what starts to happen. You'll see comments, you'll see marking out, you'll see underlining. Sometimes I'll put text within showing how a sample works. So ask questions. Every instructor is going to mark up items a little bit differently. So for instance, I use an ellipsis to denote where I am in your sentence. So I've stopped typing your sentence, but your sentence kept going, or that's where I'm sort of ending. I also like to make notes about grammar functions, but I may forget, so never hesitate to ask. So in this case, the student used but also. However, but also works with the phrase not only, and they're always paired in our writing. And so if I don't share a link in the feedback bubble, don't hesitate to ask for it or to go look one up yourself. Type in not only but also and see what sort of grammar information comes up. So what would this look like as a submission when you turn it back in? Well, we take that original and we edit. We put in that the monkey's paw shouldn't be in italics. It's in quotation marks because it's a short story. We've taken out a lot of that first sentence because it was unnecessary verbiage. And so now we just have the date beside the author's name and we're moving forward with it. So ask questions. So when you are in that submitted section of the assignment or at the bottom of your paper or something like that, don't hesitate to ask questions. I didn't mention in that feedback bubble that you saw why we would want to put quotation marks around a short story title. So it's perfectly okay to say, why did you do that? What's going on with that? Ask for more information about a grammar function. Maybe you looked it up, but it still didn't make sense. Ask for my favorite resource or for an explanation. Finally, this is about dialogue. I may make a suggestion that you don't agree with, and that's okay. Ask yourself why you want to make a change. Ask why you don't want to make a change. You may have a really good reason, and that's the point. I want you to recognize what you're doing. I want you to ask yourself about your decisions. By explaining those choices, you're going to get a lot more confidence, and you're going to increase your knowledge. And I am not perfect, so doing tons of essays in a row with my dog barking. Who knows what distracted me? So never feel like, oh, she's right 100% and I'm always going to be wrong. Never feel that way. It's a dialogue, a discussion. There are so many ways to be right when we write. So I want you to know that there are lots of possibilities. I also try not to just give you sort of an answer because it is only one way to correct an area. I want you to be thinking about what you want to say, how you want to say it, and I want you to feel confident about your choices. I don't want you to parrot my writing when you're gone because then you won't have me for every other paper. You have yourself, and I want you and your ideas and your points to be really strong and clear. So some resources I love, we have things like the Pocket Key for Writers. I also enjoy the Bedford Handbook, and then Strunk and White's Elements of Style is a perennial favorite of many. I spend a lot of time at the Purdue OWL. It's the online writing lab for Purdue University, and they work exceptionally hard to have one of the better ones in the world. So check that out. They also have sections in both APA and MLA with a small section in Chicago. Writing references is hard work, so look for things like citation machines. I tend to use bipme.org or citationmachine.net, but go out there and type in something like citation machine and you will come up with a lot. Also look for resources like Grammarly or Perla. Look for things that will for free, and then obviously the better functions are pay, but at the same time you can use a free version of Grammarly and it does a lot, so use those free versions. But overall, revision is about exploring and asking questions to be the best communicator that we can be. It is a dialogue, it is a discussion, it is never one-sided. So ask questions, explore, test it out, and as we go through doing several, you're going to get better and better at it.